Welcome to our live stream. This is Shashank welcoming you guys from the community team at LottieFiles. Today, we are very excited to walk you through and enlighten you on how to animate your app icons using Lottie. Eric Ampire would help us to walk you through how you can use this into applications. He is a software engineer at LottieFiles and also a Google developer expert for Android. I would highly appreciate if you could comment in from where you're tuning in, and let's keep it going. So before we get into the presentation and the quick demo of animation, I would like to walk you through what LottieFiles is and how you can leverage and utilize LottieFiles into your day-to-day life. So LottieFiles is a platform for testing, collaborating, and discovering animation for a community of animators, designers, and data developers. So just to put it in the layman terms, I will quickly show you what LottieFiles is and how you can find it and how you can download it and how you can plug and play it into your application. So all you have to do is you have to go to LottieFiles.com. You just click on discover, click on free ready to use animation. You will find tons of animations over here, right? And you can choose any. So let's say on daily basis, we generally utilize progress bar. So you just have to type in any of the keyboard. You would see the suggestions. You click on it. You click on the progress bar. See, this is the progress bar, and this particular progress bar tells you how many frames there are. Frames are 90, and how long it is going to take. You can also change the animation speed. This would dramatically increase. Also, there are colors as well which you can choose, which basically can align with your application or web. You can change the color. You can change the background color. You can also change the animation color, which you can see here. So the first layer of this particular animation would change if I click on here, right? So this is the very quick and very handy tool whereby you can just play and plug and play around with it to see which whatever Lottie animation which suits you best. You can download it and you can plug and play into your site. So as you click on the download, these are the file formats which you can utilize: Lottie JSON, GIF, customize MP4, and so forth. Also, if you want to integrate into HTML page or a WordPress page, you can click over here and it will take you to relevant link whereby you can just integrate into your website. So that's a quick overview on what LottieFiles is. Um, Apart from that, these are few use cases which you can look into. You can create in-app animations. You can integrate into website and blogs, as I showed you before. You can also create animate stickers. You can use it into ads, social media. So these are a few use cases which are used on regular basis. You can also come up with your own, and you can start implementing and using it into your user scenario. So that's pretty much it. Just to give you a brief on what LottieFiles is, I would be playing an intro video that would give you a good idea on what LottieFiles is and how you can use it.
I've got a big fat drum, big fat drum. I've got a big fat drum, pounding so bad. I've got a big fat drum, big fat drum. I've got a big fat, big. Listen. Yeah. Clap. You ready? Let's go.
I hope you liked that video. So we have somewhere around 130,000 plus companies who are using LottieFiles to ship. So those are into various verticals. So if you name banking and finance, retail and e-commerce, design, travel, education, media, you just name the vertical and you would find companies using LottieFiles to ship. As it is very easy to handle, very small files, and which you can integrate into your web development or app development and where you want to integrate into. So that's pretty much it about LottieFiles. So we also have the community, which whereby we basically create and launch offline events and online events. This is one of the live stream whereby we target developers, designers, and animators just to share the knowledge and keep them updated about what's happening at LottieFiles and how they can utilize LottieFiles on daily basis. So I encourage you guys to look for this hashtag, that is hash Lottie community, to see what's happening and what has happened. And also we do offline events as well. This will keep you updated on that in collaboration with various organizations like Figma, Adobe, and Protopie. So I encourage you guys to follow this particular Lottie community hashtag to see what's happening and what's new coming your way. With this, I would like to invite the man of this live stream, Eric Ampire, to show us the real thing which is gonna do and build through live coding session. Over to you, Eric.
Thanks, Chacha, for the introduction. So my name is Eric. I'm a software engineering working at LottieFile on the mobile team, and I'm also a Google developer expert for the Android. So in today's live stream, so we'll try to cover some basics concept of using Lottie animation when it's come to animate icons. So the first step that we'll try to follow is, first of all, just be sure that you have an empty project like this one. It's just an empty project that I've created using Jetpack Compose. All the principles that I will try to share with you today can be also applicable to an XML project. But for this live stream, everything that we'll try to use will be written into Jetpack Compose projects. So right here, like you can see, it's just an empty project. And I will try just to run this project just to give you a brief look about which application that we are going to build. So right now here, you can see I have just created a simple screen. It's just something simple. It's just a column with a bottom navigation. The bottom navigation has just two buttons here. The first one will show just the home button, and the second one will show the notification button. So let me just try to run this application just to show you guys what are we going to do. All right, so here is the application. So what you can see here, there is the bottom navigation. So even though in this case, the bottom navigation is into the bottom of the screen, but just for the showcase, we have two buttons here, the home button and the notification button. So we used to see those kind of components on Android, iOS, and any kind of application. We used to have those kind of components. But as you can notice here, every time I click on home or notification, there isn't any kind of animation or something like that. And the idea behind this live stream is to show you guys how you can animate this home icon here and how you can animate this notification icon here by taking advantage of Lottie animation. Because if you try to see the LottieFile website, you will find out a lot of home animations, so notification icons that you can use inside your application. So now you know how the application looks like. So let me walk you through the first step that you have to follow in order to be able to, what can I say, to implement the something that I'm going to showcase here. The first thing that you need to have is to install the Lottie Compose dependencies that you can find online, or you can just copy paste this line on your dependencies and try to synchronize your Android Studio, and automatically Android Studio will try to download the version that you specify here about Lottie Compose, and you will be ready to go. So in my case, it's already done, so I don't need to do that anymore. And the second step that you need to follow is to have your Lottie animations. Like Shasha shared earlier, you can download Lottie animation on lottie.com, LottieFile.com. There is plenty of animation that you can download, but in my case, I have just downloaded 3 of them. I have downloaded one JSON file that I'm going to use as the home icon, so it will be an animation, but in my case, I'm trying to use it as an icon. And another one will be the one that is supposed to show a quick animation, a small animation related to the notification. So like you can see here, I have already downloaded 3 JSON files that represent my animation. The first one is this one that represents my home icon here. The second one is the notification. And the last one is here. So I will try to showcase in which situation we are going to use this last animation. So now let's jump into the code and see what we can do. So let me go back to the home screen file. And what I'm going to do, as you can see here, the bottom navigation has just 2 bottom navigation items. The first one that represents my home button here, and the second one that represents the notification button here. So what we have here, like you can see, the icon part of this bottom navigation item has just a static icon. But we don't need a static icon in this case. We want to replace this static icon with a Lottie animation, and we'll see that in a couple of moments. The same thing is applied here. We have just a static notification icon that is already come from the Jetpack Compose library, but we'll try to see how we can replace this static animation with a Lottie animation. So the first thing that we need to know when it's come to animate an animation. Like you can see here, we already have the files that represents the animation. Another thing that we need to handle here is to get access to this home file, for example, into the code in order to be able to animate it. And the first thing that I need to have is the composition. So like I have shown in the previous live stream about the introduction of Lottie animation inside your Android application, there is 2 components that you need when it comes to animate a Lottie animation inside an Android project. The first thing is the composition, or in other words, an object that will allow you to have access to a specific animation. The second object will be the progress. So what is the idea behind the progress? The progress will help you to track the animation progress. So for example, you can want to animate the Lottie file from start to the end, or vice versa, or something like that. So let's try to create those 2 components, and we'll see how we can replace this static icon with a Lottie animation. So the first thing I need to have is a composition. A composition. What I need to do is to call this object here, remember Lottie composition. And like you can see, this function take a spec as a parameter. So what is the spec? So let me write something here, then I can try to explain. Lottie spec. So as you can see, the spec contains another object, and this object must have the reference to the animation that I want to load. In my case, I need to load the home.json animation. And everything I have to do, if you're familiar with Android development, in order to have access to a file that is available in the raw file, the only thing that you need to do is r.raw.home. So in that case, I have just created my composition. So in that case, as this composition is linked to the home animation, I can just call it home composition. Great. So the second thing that I need to have is the progress. So what is the idea behind the progress? The progress, like I have said earlier, the goal of the progress is just to keep track the animation progress. So you can use that to pause and play the animation and so on and so forth. So I'm going to create a progress here. I will just call it on progress. Then I will use this syntax here, animate Lottie composition as states. So by calling this function, we realize that this function takes a composition as a parameter. As you can see, I have already created a home composition here. So the only thing that I have to do is to initialize this composition parameter with the one that I have already created here. In order just to avoid having this issue, so instead of using the equal sign, you can just use by. And like you can see, the error just disappeared. Okay, so now I have the composition, I have the progress. The second step is just to replace now this icon animation that is static by something that can be a dynamic, like a Lottie animation. In order to do that, I need to use the Lottie animation composable, and this composable take two parameters. The first one is the composition that I have already created here, and the second one is the progress. Like I have said earlier, the progress is responsible of tracking the animation progress. What I'm going to do is to initialize the composition with the home composition object that I have created here. And the last thing, it will be just to put the progress that I have created just here inside this progress lambda. And here we go. But there is one more point that we need to take care of is the animation size. So for example, when it comes to use, for example, a static animation in Android used to have a specific size. For example, this home animation has 24 by 24 dp, and we have to do the same for this Lottie animation in order to avoid having a big animation. In order to do that, I have just to resize this composable size by using the modifier size. I will use just 24 dp, and here we go. So right now you can think that after compiling this project I will have something that will animate, but not. We just need something else that will help us to, what can I say, to manipulate this progress. Right now the progression of the animation is static. What we need to do, the idea behind this project is every time the user try to click on this on button or the notification button, we have to play the animation. But in our case, every time the user click on, for example, this first bottom navigation item, we are not doing something that will help us to play this animation here. In order to do that, we just need to create a simple Boolean variable here. For example, I can call it is on animation playing, and just using a compose syntax here just to store this Boolean. So by default, we will consider that the home animation is not playing. And every time the user will click on the bottom navigation item here, we will try to set this variable from false to true. Let's do that. Is home animation. Great, that's amazing. So what we need to do here, we have just to make sure that everything is working as we expect. So here we can see that we have an error here saying that we have to use a variable instead of a, what can I say, a constant. We have to use a variable that can be changed instead of this constant that I have used here. In order just to avoid having this issue, the only thing that you need to do is just to replace this val by var, and you will see the error here will disappear. And the last step that we have to follow is just to link this Boolean variable here with the home progress. The onProgress has a parameter called isPlaying. The only thing that we have to do is just to link those two variables with the variable that I've created here. So what's gonna happen here? So every time this variable is set from false to true, this onProgress will handle that change and automatically will play the animation that I've created here. Don't forget that for this animation, I have used the onProgress that we have just created here. So now let's try to run the application and see what can happen. The expected behavior here will be every time the user click on this home button, we have to animate the home Lottie animation that we have just get access from the raw folder. So let's try to execute the app and see what's gonna happen. Okay, like you can see, the look of the animation changed, the look of the icon changed because it represents the animation that I have just downloaded. So what I'm going to do, I will just try to click on this button. And as you can see, it's just a micro interaction, if I can say like that. The animation is simple, and every time you click for the second time, nothing happened because I have already set this variable to true. So let's just replicate the same behavior of this on button to the notification button. In order to do that, I have just to copy paste those two variables, the one that will track the playing and the pause of the animation, the composition, and the progress. Let me just copy paste and just rename. Instead of home, I will say notification. Instead of home composition, I can say notification composition. And instead of home progress, I can say notification progress. Okay, and we have to link the notification progress with this is notification animation is playing. And don't forget to replace the home animation with the notification animation that we already have in our resource file. So what we are going to do is to replace this variable here, not this one, but the animation by, let's say, notification. So the animation is already there, and now we have access to all our components. The only thing that we have to do is to copy this icon here and replace that with the Lottie animation, because for the notification, we still have the static icon. So what we are going to do is just replace this static icon with the Lottie animation composable. For the size, we are going to use the same size. For the composition, instead of home composition, we are going to use, let's say, notification composition. And for the progress, we are going to use the notification progress. And here we are ready to go. The last thing that we have to do is just to initialize this variable that we have created here is notification animation playing to true, in order to allow the composition to get an idea that I have to play the animation. So what we have to do is notification playing set to true. So in order to be able to restart the animation again, so what I'm going to do, every time I click on the notification button, I have to reinitialize the progress of the on button. And every time I click on the on button, I have to initialize the progress of the notification button. In order to do that, so for example, here, when the user click on the notification button, I have to set the on progress to false, just in order to be able to play the animation again every time the user click on it again. And here I have to do for the notification false. Okay, now we have both the home and the notification animation linked to a Lottie animation. here it's very, very important to specify the size that corresponds to a size of a specific icon. Because here we are not using a Lottie animation, just a regular animation. We are using that as an icon, and you have to be sure that the animation size has the same size as a normal icon. In the case of Android, we used to use 24 dp. So right now, I will try to play to run this application just to see what's gonna happen. Let me just resize this a little more. And you can see I have two buttons here, the home button and the notification button. So up that you can see, I will try to click on this one. And you can see that small, beautiful animation. And let me click on the notification. And you can see it's like on Telegram, every time you try to interact on a specific button. And here we go. So as you can see, I have been able to animate the home icon and the notification icon very, very quickly. So I don't even need to create a custom animation or a custom icon directly in my code. The only thing that I need to do is just to download a specific animation on LottieFile.com and try to use that in your project, then you will be ready to go. So another interesting use case that I need to show you is related to another interesting button that we used to use very often, is something like a toggle button or a switch. So let me just try to create a small switch here, for example, a checkbox. So for the checkbox here in Jetpack Compose, when it's come to create a checkbox, you have to have a Boolean that will represent the state of that checkbox. I think I have already created a Boolean variable here that is called is on, and I will just link that Boolean in this checkbox here. And I have the on change callback. So every time the user click on the checkbox, I have to update the state of the checkbox. So for example, if the checkbox was true, I have just to reverse that state. So let me just run the application again to see what's gonna happen. And here we have just our simple and regular checkbox. So for example, every time I click, the state of the checkbox is changed, but it's not much more interesting for us. I will try to show you how you can replace those kind of buttons or those kind of components with Lottie animation. So here in my project, I already have a Lottie animation that can quickly replace this checkbox. And we will try to see how we can handle those effects here. So for example, when I click, the state of the checkbox starts from false to true. And when I click again, we just reverse the states. Let's do something interesting here. What I'm going to do is just to copy paste this Lottie animation. I will just to use that here, just on top of the checkbox here. I will try to get access to this checkbox or toggle animation that I've already downloaded here. What I'm going to do, like usual, I will need a composition. So let me just copy this here and try to put this just here. So when you finish writing your code, you can try to see how you can improve a little more the code. Here I am just showcase some stuff just for sake of simplicity. So here I'm trying to call it, let's say, checkbox composition. And let me link this composition to the Lottie to video checkbox that I have already downloaded into my Android Studio project. But here, the difference between the animation that I have used for the button and the one I'm supposed to use for this checkbox here or the toggle button will be different in terms of the progress. So for example, for the bottom navigation item here, so we are just animating the button every time the user tries to click on it. But here it's not the case. It's not the case. Why? Because every time the user click on it, we have to update the state. So for example, for 0 to 1. And every time the user tries to click on this check button here, we have to reverse the states. And in order to do that, we don't need to use this animate Lottie composition as the state. We will use another techniques that is that's come from the compose API related to the animation. So let me just rename this composition correctly. Checkbox composition. Okay, good. So another thing that I need to have here will be to create now another variable that will handle the states and will allow me to reverse the states every time the user click on this checkbox twice. So what I'm going to do is to create, let's say, checkbox progress. And instead of using animate Lottie composition as states, what I'm going to use this another compose function will be animate float as states. The progress of any Lottie animation is represented by a float. When I say a float, I'm talking about something like a 1.0, a floating number, right? And here we are going to create that progress, that variable that will track the progress. So when the animation is not playing, the progress of that animation is 0. And when an animation finish playing or finish animating, the progress of that animation will be 1. So in our case, what are we going to do is when this is on variable is true, so it means that the animation is supposed to go from 0 to 1. So what I'm going to do is to check here if, let's say, if is on. What I'm going to do, I will just try to see to say 1. Otherwise, I will let's say 0. And here I can even specify the way that Jetpack Compose will try to handle this. So the idea behind the animate float as the state is it will help us to switch from 1 to 0 or vice versa based on this variable. And we can use this logic here in order to animate, to reproduce the same behavior as our checkbox here. So what I'm going to do, I have the composition, I have the progress. So what I'm going to do, I will just replace the notification composition here by the checkbox composition, and I will replace the notification progress with the checkbox progress. And here, the checkbox, so I will not want to keep it 24 dp as the regular button, so I want just to make it a little more bigger. So for that, I will say something like, let's say 100 dp. And now, what are we going to do? I will try to keep also this checkbox, and I will try to run the application again in order to see how this Lottie to video animation looks like. So let me run the app again. All right. So like you can see here, we have this Lottie animation that is like a toggle button that can allow you to toggle between, what can I say? It can be to activate or disable something. So it's exactly the same principle that we used to use when it comes to implement a checkbox here. But here, like you can see, it's much more beautiful. So what we have to do is every time the user click on this animation, we have to, what can I say, to play this animation, to reverse the playing of this animation, if I can say like that. And every time the user click on it, we have just to play the animation again, but in the opposite way. What I'm going to do is to implement the Lottie animation clickable here. So I have to make this component clickable. So in order to be able to modify the isOn Boolean variable in order to make it animating. In order to do that, if you are familiar with Jetpack Compose, the only thing that you need to do is to add a clickable variable to the the modifier here. And what I need to do is, for example, if this variable is on, what I'm going to do, I have just to put it, for example, to false. And in the case that it's false, I have just to put that in, I have just to set that to true. But instead of doing that, I can just do it something like this. So I can say the new variable, the new value of this on variable is the reverse of the previous value. So I will just use the reverse Boolean operator here, and by doing something like this. Right now, if I try to click on this animation, nothing is happening. But what I'm going to do, by doing this, I will make sure that this variable will change. And every time this is on variable will change, Jetpack Compose will trigger this part of the code, and will try to check if the animation is on. If the animation is on, or if this variable is on, what we are going to do, we are going to reverse the animation progress from 1 to 0. And in the case that this variable here is set to false, we are going to reverse the animation. So let's see what's gonna happen when we try to run this application again. Okay, so let me try to zoom a little more just to give you a big screen here. Okay, so let me try just to click. And like you can see, the button, the animation is playing as expected. So like you can see, it's playing the same way as this checkbox, because both the animation and the checkbox is linked to the same is on variable. But I can try just to remove this one and try to run the application again. Yeah, here we go. Now, as you can see, I have a toggle button or a switch button, but it's not an exact switch button. So it's just a Lottie animation that I have just controlled. I have just defined the logic that will allow me to, what can I say, to use this animation like a toggle button. So for example, it's quite different from this one, the home and the notification animation. And it's much more beautiful here. So what I'm going to do, like you can see, it's quite fast. I can handle the speeds of this animation. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is just to add a new property to this animate float add states method here. I can just, the variable is called animation spec. I can use any kind of animation spec that's already available in Jetpack Compose. So for example, here I can specify, let's say, twin, and this animation spec take as a parameter the duration of this animation. Right now is quite fast, so I can, let's say, I can put 1 second or 1000 milliseconds here in order to make my animation to play a little more slower. Let me just run the animation, the application again, and see what's gonna happen. Now it's quite slow, and everything is beautiful. So there is a lot of use case that you can handle just using simple Lottie animation. So you don't need to create a custom animations inside your code to animate vector or something like that. The only thing that you need to do is to go at LottieFile.com, you download a specific animation, and if you want, you can even change the color of the animation. For example, in this case, if I wasn't looking for, let's say, a black animation, I can just use the color palette tool on the LottieFile.com, or you can even use the mobile application to modify the color of this icon, and in order to match the color of the application to your design system, and you will be ready to go. So there is a lot of aspects that you can explore using Lottie animation. And in this live stream, I have just covered the few things that you can accomplish. So hopefully you can be able to to take advantage of this wonderful animation that is available already for free on LottieFile.com. So I think that's been it for this live stream. So I will give the hands to Shashank for the live Q&A if there is any question. So I will do my best to try to answer them as quick as possible and in the best way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. That was quite insightful, and you basically taught us today to how to make the UI of an app look beautiful and also dynamic. The specific UI, I would say. Let's people who has been watching. I would appreciate if you could show some love for Eric for whatever he has shown us, live demo, live coding, and so forth. And I'm opening the board for Q&A. You can post your questions in your comment. Before we jump to your question, as you're typing in the entry, we'll be taking up the question which has been posted to us before the live stream. So jumping to Q&A.
Okay, this is an interesting question. So, how to implement a tab bar like in Telegram? So, I think this question has been already covered into the live stream because I have tried to showcase how you can animate icon that you can put on a navigation bar. So the Telegram tab bar is quite similar with the navigation bar that I have just used in my demo project. You can just use the same principle that I've applied in the previous live stream, and you can be able to accomplish more and something similar like the one that is already included into the Telegram mobile app. That was an interesting question. Okay, so here is another interesting question. Can we integrate the default Android button with LottieFile? I think the answer is yes, because when you are using a toolkit like Jetpack Compose, you can just create a custom button that is linked to a specific Lottie animation, and you will start using that custom button instead of the default Android button. And it's quite easier. It's just to use the same principle that I have used for the navigation item. So, and the answer to this question is yes. You can use, you can integrate LottieFile with the default Android buttons.
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense.
Okay, here is another interesting question. So, why do I benefit from uploading public free animations to Lottie? I think this is a question related to community. So I think LottieFile has a huge community that is growing every single day. And by publishing your animation for free at LottieFile, you are contributing of growing that community. And you can be sure that a lot of people will take advantage of your animation. And yeah, I think it's a great way to contribute to the Lottie community by uploading free animation. But if you want to upload paid animation, you can also do that. I think LottieFile.com can also give you a way to sell your animation if you want to. But by publishing it for free, it's a great way to contribute to the LottieFile community. That was an interesting question. Okay, that's also another interesting question. How do you decide when an icon should be done with code instead of Lottie? So I think in order to be able to answer this question, in my opinion, I think it depends. So for example, in my case, I don't have too much skills when it comes to create a custom animation from scratch. So for example, when it's come to animate a vector drawable or not. So I don't have that skill. And in that case, I used to use Lottie animation instance because I don't need to create an animation again. The animation is already created for me. The only thing that I need is just to pick up that animation and try to use that animation directly inside my code. So I think it depends from everyone. If you are pretty comfortable of animating your animation using the code, it's up to you. And if you are much more comfortable using Lottie animation, you can use that. But in my opinion, using Lottie animation has quite benefit, as a lot of benefit instead of vector drawable. Why? Because, for example, in using a Lottie animation, you have much more option when it comes to customize. Like I have said earlier, you can use the color palette to change the color. You can change the speeds and all other properties related to the Lottie animation. So I think that's my points about this question.
Make complete sense.
Yeah. So I think there is one more question in Slack. So someone asked, I think Eve asked a question. So can I use the Lottie animation on my icon app? So I think that question is restricted to the Android system. So in order to use a Lottie animation, I don't think that it's allowed right now in the Android framework. You can't use a Lottie animation as an app icon. So for that, the only way that you want to, if you want, for example, to animate your launcher icon of your application, the only way you have to do is just to use the guideline that is already provided at the official documentation of Android. But I think that can be a good challenge to investigate about how we can use Lottie animation as an icon. But for now, it's not supported yet.
Cool.
I don't know if there is
I
any other
think
question.
I think we have covered all of them. I think I have a question for you.
That's cool.
Let's say if we want to browse through the code which you have shown us today, is there any GitHub link through which we can get the access to it and just poke it
Yeah,
and play around with
yeah.
it?
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. So there is a couple of links that will be shared with you guys, so you can use those links. For example, when you want to get started with Jetpack Compose or let's say Lottie animation. And for this project, the project is already available on GitHub. So I think we will also share the link of this project with you, and you can be able to play around with all the stuff that I have included into this the project. So yes, the link of the project will be shared, and it can be used as a starting point when it comes to animate icon using Lottie animations.
Perfect. Perfect. Before you go, any tips and tricks you would like to share with our fellow coders in the session today?
Yeah, there is just one. So first of all, when you are an Android developer, I think the simplest ways to handle animation is starting using Jetpack Compose. So I'm not trying to say that implementing all this stuff in XML is impossible, but implementing all those stuff in Jetpack Compose is quite easier. So you can do that in a couple of minutes and you will be ready to go. So there is a couple of links that have been shared into the chat. So you can just try to follow along those links just to get started with Jetpack Compose and Lottie for Jetpack Compose. I think that is the good advice that I can give you, because if you try to try all this stuff using XML, so sometimes it can be a little more complicated. By with Jetpack Compose, the process is quite smooth. So that was my closing thoughts. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. We loved having you on board, and it was great having the session which you have showed us. It was very insightful and informative. Thank
Thank
you
you,
so much for
Shasha.
giving us the time and the knowledge which you have shared with us. I highly appreciate it.
Thanks. Thanks everyone for being here.
Okay, so Guys who have joined us, we would love to be in touch with you guys. These are our social media channels whereby you can come and join us. We do such events very frequently, and we are trying to increase the frequency and cadence as well. You can be updated on what's next happening, what are the new feature releases, what next you can do, and how you can realize the full potential using this small JSON files and lotties in your application. I encourage you guys to follow us so that you be in touch. You can follow us on Discord. Discord can be used to, uh, if you have any question, you can basically come and ask the question on Discord. On GitHub, we are there. You can go on GitHub and browse through our open source projects as well, which will give you a much more insight on how you can integrate Lottie into your existing app. And going forward, you can utilize all of the features which you see on the Lottie player, which I've showed you, like frames and changing the color palettes, and changing the animation speed and so forth. So you can also browse through our GitHub repositories too. So please follow us. We will be waiting for your follow, and we will follow back. Also, as everything went fine so far, the session was good. We would love to hear from you. We need your feedback, valuable feedback, so that we could improve. We could reach to your expectation in our next session. So I would highly appreciate if you could get some time to scan this code and leave us a feedback, valuable feedback. Well, that's pretty much it. I thank you, every one of you. You have been amazing. Thanks for making the session successful, and thanks for making the session interactive too. I highly appreciate it. Thank you so much.